Shields up, Armbreakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and Diablo 4 was officially announced yesterday during the Blizzcon Opening Ceremony. Now, there were a couple of more announcements that I might want to talk about at the end of this video, but for now I really want to focus in on the Diablo announcement because, as you guys might be aware, I'm a huge Diablo fan. I've loved Diablo 1, Diablo 2, and even Diablo 3, and I know that a lot of people don't really like Diablo 3, and I can understand why that is. It changed quite a couple of things. In terms of story, I don't really care that much for Diablo 3 either. I don't think the story was its particularly strong point, in my opinion, but the gameplay itself, I still found it very satisfying, particularly after the introduction of Loot 2.0, which actually fixed quite a bit of the game that was completely broken and non-functional, in my opinion, which was the whole dependency of you actually playing with the real money auction house. I hated that. I fought against that since it was originally announced for Diablo 3, and it was just a feature that I friggin' hated and loathed. So with the introduction of Reaper of Souls and Loot 2.0 and all of that stuff, Diablo 3 actually became a lot more fun for me. So I hope that that is one of the lessons that they take into the development of Diablo 4, because this game is still way far from release. Like, one of the things that they've said during the presentation is not even Blizzard soon. And you guys know when Blizzard says soon, it like still takes a crap ton of time. And in there, they actually said, guys, not even Blizzard soon. So it's still going to take a long time before we actually see Diablo 4. And I have a bit of mixed feelings when it came to this particular announcement. So first we have the cinematic trailer that they showed us, which I actually thought was pretty cool. It was a cool cinematic trailer, but as we all know, cinematic trailers really don't tell us anything about gameplay. So I saw the cinematic trailer and I was like, okay, you got to show me something else. And luckily enough, they actually came up with a gameplay trailer as well. Now, one of the things that I have to say, if all you've seen up until this point has been the gameplay trailer, it is not an accurate representation of what you can expect from Diablo 4. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what. I saw the gameplay trailer and I was immediately taken aback. I was like, wow, this you took this long and this is what you brought? Like, seriously, I didn't like what I saw in the trailer. I'm not like, sure, you see a couple of things in the gameplay trailer that looked okay, but most of it I was just like, dude, this is just not what I expected at all, particularly when you read, articles that you can find online from Jason Schreier, where he goes into great detail about all of the stuff that happened in Blizzard throughout the whole Diablo Immortal fiasco and the development story behind Diablo 4. For those of you that don't know, at some point, if the reports are to be believed, at some point there was a project, I believe it was codenamed Project Fenris, and that project was being led by the same person who led the development on Reaper of Souls that actually fixed a lot of the problems with Diablo 3. And that particular project was like Blizzard's take on Dark Souls. So as you can imagine, I was much more excited for something like that. And I still held hope that some portion of that project could come into fruition with the eventual announcement of Diablo 4, but it does look like that particular gameplay style was completely scrapped, and they're going back to the safest thing, which is what they know how to do, the isometric, top-down perspective action RPG that we've seen them do before. And it's like, I know that a lot of you are going to say, but Rurikhan, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And it's not. I'm not saying that that is a bad thing. I'm just saying that, I had hopes about this other thing that we had heard of, and I had hopes that that was going to be permeated into this particular title. But anyway, when I saw the gameplay trailer and I saw that it wasn't that, and what I was looking at didn't look very polished, the spell effects looked actually considerably less powerful than spells that we had seen in Diablo 3 and maybe even Diablo 2. So I was very much taken aback, and after watching the gameplay trailer, I was just flat out, meh. All of this time and this is what you bring to the table kind of almost looks just like Path of Exile, I guess. You guys kind of go back to that darker art style, which is cool, which is what people want, because everybody's like, oh man, make it darker. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Bring the gore front and center and all of that stuff. I'm all for that. But I expected a bigger evolution than what I had seen in that gameplay trailer. However, after watching that gameplay trailer, I started looking around for more information. I watched the panel that took place in the Mythic stage after the public presentation because someone was live streaming it on YouTube through a pirate stream. Just like, whatever, no big deal. So I watched it there. And as I was watching that panel, they were talking about a couple of more details in regards to Diablo 4. So one of the things that you guys might be wondering is like, okay, so when does this take place? It takes place decades after the events of Reaper of Souls, and apparently because of all of the chaos and carnage that took place after Reaper of Souls, heaven closed its gates, and it's a time of great despair and chaos in the land. And the character that you see in the cinematic trailer, the character that is resurrected, that is Lilith. That is Mephisto's daughter. She is supposedly the mother of the creation of Sanctuary. I don't really remember that much from the mythos of Diablo. Sorry. Not too much information to keep track of. But yeah, Lilith is the one that you see in that particular trailer, and she is supposedly going to be the big antagonist. I'm still very curious as to who the other character was. I'm not sure if that has been mentioned because, I'm not at BlizzCon. I'm not interviewing the developers. I'm not really privy to a lot of the information that is being shared on it so far. But when it came to gameplay, one of the things that they've said is that this is going to be a shared open world with 5 distinct regions and/or biomes. So you can think of it almost as 5 acts from previous Diablo games, where each act is going to have like a certain theme. Like you have the act that's the desert act. You have the one that's the swamp act, and you have the, all of these other things. As a matter of fact, I think in the website themselves, in the website itself, they talk about the world and they show you some of these locations. Explore Sanctuary. You got Skoglen, the untamed lands of Skoglen. They're as verdant as they are deadly. Those who get lost in the woods seldom return. Their screams muted by spine-chilling howls. The druids who dwell in here will do anything to protect our way of life. And there's a bunch of details about this. You can see that Skoglen is like this highland-looking place. I would imagine kind of like Scotland, maybe. Then you have other locations, the Fractured Peaks. They didn't actually show gameplay there. The Dry Steppes. The Hawizar, which looks kind of like the swampy, murky zone biome. But remember, this is all connected in one map that you can just like navigate as you see fit, because there really isn't like a hard progression like you've had in previous Diablo campaigns. Whereas, in Diablo 1, you're just constantly descending deeper into the cathedral. In Diablo 2, you go from the, let's just call it the Amazon level, into the desert level, into the pygmy, swampy, whatever level, into the, what was that fourth one? Was that hell or heaven? It was the fortress that was down in hell. Whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. You had like that linear progression that would take place. In this one, they're saying that you can just like go from one end of the map to the other end of the map and just do side quests. You don't even have to do like the main campaign. They're also saying that it is going to be non-linear. I'm not sure if by that they just mean that, hey, you can either do the main campaign or you can do these side quests, or if it means that you can actually make like decisions along the way that could potentially change certain things. But I doubt that is going to be the case, because being Diablo and considering how safe Blizzard is being towards this title, I think they're going to keep things pretty traditional when it comes to that stuff. But one of the things about this shared open world that is important for you to understand is the shared part. So they're going to basically do this kind of like Destiny, which was one of the games that most people instantly recognize. That's why I'm bringing it up. I'm not saying it was the first game to do this, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Like, you're going to be roaming through the world, you're going to be doing your quests, and you might run into other players randomly. They're also doing stuff like world events, which again is things that you've seen, being brought into the limelight through Destiny. It's something that we've definitely seen in Destiny a whole lot, so that's why I'm kind of bringing that to the comparison. But you're going to be finding world bosses, you're going to be finding other world events that involve you doing doing certain actions that will reward you with additional loot and so on and so forth. So basically the MMO light treatment, so to speak, that we've seen a lot of games receive. And so it's fully open world, fully shared world, and it's going to be always online. Now, I'm not sure if this means always online just for PC, because if you guys remember, Diablo 3 was also always online, but it was only always online for PC, and in the consoles it actually had an offline mode. I'm not sure if this is going to be the same deal or not, but I doubt it. I think that this one, because, you know, now Blizzard has more experience with consoles since they've developed Overwatch, and it was a simultaneous release, and Overwatch is also an always online game. I expect that Diablo 4 is going to get that same kind of treatment. It's going to be an always online game, and that's probably one of the reasons why they didn't immediately announce it for the Nintendo Switch. Or maybe they're planning Diablo Immortal as the Switch one. I don't know what the plans are there, because they didn't talk about Diablo Immortal that much on the opening ceremony. Not that I'm super interested in what they do with Diablo Immortal to begin with, because, you know, we already know that it's mainly developed for phones, and I just don't care that much about phone games. But ultimately, you know, just be aware that this is going to be an always online experience, and if you're not into that, then this is probably not going to be the game for you. But, you know, that's kind of like the next step that they decided to take with the Diablo franchise. Now, when it comes to stuff like builds and skills and talent trees, they're actually going a little bit closer to Diablo 2 than necessarily Diablo 3. So you'll be able to select your skills, and you'll be able to invest points in your skills, and you can find tomes throughout the world that you can use to get more skills and put points into the skills that you actually like. But beyond the skills, there's also an actual talent tree. Now, the thing that kind of confused me, and again, this is all just information that I'm getting kind of like secondhand, is that they were saying that you can change the talent tree whenever you want, but the skill points are permanent. So basically you're like, oh, I really like this skill, I'm going to use this skill, and I'm going to put a bunch of points into it. But if you want to use another skill, you're going to have to actually do like some kind of a respec, whereas the talents, you can just like swap them willy-nilly whenever you want. I'd expect it to be the other way around, where I would expect to just be able to change everything as I go along. But basically, you will be able to do some kind of respecking, but at the same time, you will have some permanent choices that you will be making to your character, whereas, you know, whenever you're swapping your builds around, that is going to be much more of a process than, say, like it was in Diablo 3, where you're just like, oh, just swap this thing over here, done. There's going to be rune words again. They're changing their focus to be more, for builds to be more about using legendaries than necessarily just set bonuses, because set bonuses were dominating quite heavily when it comes to Diablo 3, and they want set bonuses to be there, but they don't want them to be quite as dominant, because, you know, whenever you are dependent on like a 4-piece set bonus, or, you know, set bonuses like that, you're kind of like limited in the gear that you can have equipped, whereas, you know, if that's not as reliant for your build, there's a little bit more diversity. I think you guys get what I'm going for. But ultimately, despite all of this information, with only having watched the gameplay trailer, I was still not on board. So then I went into Riker's stream. Riker actually live streamed gameplay directly to his Twitch channel, and I'm probably going to link his Twitch in the pinned comment, the Twitch VOD of his live stream. And in Riker's live stream, it paints a much better picture of the game, because it shows that the animations are actually a lot more polished than what you see in the gameplay trailer. I really don't understand what was the deal with that gameplay trailer, because I don't know how it's possible that just a regular stream looks better than a gameplay trailer. But that was the case for me. Maybe it's not the case for everybody, but it was definitely the case for me. And watching Riker's stream, I was much more convinced that this could be something that I could potentially be interested in. And I know that right now everybody's going to start talking about how, oh, but Blizzard is a terrible company, they're doing all of this stuff, and I agree. I completely agree. Like the stuff that they did to Blitzchung, the stuff that they've done with the prize money for the World of Warcraft tournaments, like that's all scummy stuff. Like you'll get no contention for me when it comes to that stuff. I completely agree. They fucked up. There's a reason why last year I made like five or six, I don't know how many it was, the series of the fall of Diablo, which essentially kind of turned into the fall of Blizzard. There's a reason why I've been criticizing them so much, because they completely lost their way. And even though they started the BlizzCon ceremony with like an apology and all of that stuff, we still haven't really seen what actions they are taking to make everything right. Because, they're going to have to back up that apology with actions that, as of the recording of this video, they still have not taken. They still have not publicly announced what those actions were. So, until this particular point, those apologies ring completely hollow. But that doesn't mean that I can't look at what they are developing with my critical, analytical thought process, because I'm still a fan of their games. That's just the fact of life. Like, I've been super disappointed with World of Warcraft. I was super disappointed with what they've shown with Diablo Immortal. But, at the end of the day, who else is going to pick up the Diablo torch? There's other games out there that are doing a lot of interesting things in the action RPG. Particularly one that instantly comes to mind is Lost Ark, which seems like a million times more innovative than anything that Diablo 4 is showing right now, even after having watched Riker's stream. Lost Ark just seems like it's actually trying to bring something new to the table, whereas Diablo just feels like it's iterating on the stuff that they've already known, and it doesn't really feel like it's breaking new ground at all. It feels like the safe option, which is one of the things that I would say about this particular BlizzCon, is that a lot of the stuff that they announced just feels like it's safe things, right? You got your Diablo 4, which everybody wants. It almost came out immediately after the apology, as almost like, oh, by the way, we're sorry for what we did with Diablo Immortal. Here's your Diablo 4, right? And it's not even close to being ready, right? They're giving you this demo that people are going to be able to play and get some first impressions on. But basically, I don't think you're going to see this game, maybe not even by 2022. Like, we just don't know. We have no idea how long it's going to take for this game to come out, particularly, being announced this early and still feeling like it's in a very early state. So basically what I'm getting at is that I'm still very much divided. Like, Riker's stream got me a little bit more on board and a lot less negative towards what I had seen, because what I had seen, again, that gameplay trailer, there's just something about it that I just didn't really care for. But it definitely looks like they're going more after that Diablo 2 vibe, which was actually what I was really hoping to get out of BlizzCon this year. One of the things that I really wanted to get was a Diablo 2 remaster. I think that I would have been happier than the announcement of Diablo 4, because I just miss Diablo 2 so much. I don't want to boot it up in that old state that it's like you can only have it at 800 by 600 massive pixels, like plays much better on a CRT screen. I mean, come on. It's just like, it just doesn't seem that might be a possibility at this point, because otherwise I think that it would have been announced, and it would have actually been a really good compliment to be announced alongside Diablo 4, because you guys might be like, they want to focus on the Diablo 4 experience and they don't want another game kind of like stealing away the spotlight. But at the end of the day, Diablo 4 isn't even close to being released, whereas a Diablo remaster would actually have done wonders to kind of maintain your player base engaged in the Diablo franchise and keeping people talking about Diablo. And I heavily suspect that if we don't see some kind of announcement during BlizzCon this year, which, as of the recording of this video, I've been Googling it nonstop to see if anything was announced in terms of a D2 remaster. I think if we don't see it, I don't think it's going to be a possibility, because there's this whole talk about how supposedly they lost the code or something. And yeah, it's just very sad that is actually the game that I would really like to play soon. But, Diablo 4 might be good, might not be good. I'll need to see more. I'll need to actually play it. But if you are interested, again, one of the things that I will tell you is don't go by the gameplay trailer. Check out Riker's stream. He's also got a dev on there at some point. They talk about a bunch of stuff. They talk about PvP. PvP is going to be making an actual comeback into this Diablo, which, interestingly enough, I did a lot of PvP in Diablo 2. As a matter of fact, Diablo 2 is like the first game that I actually devoted myself to being somewhat decent at player versus player combat. It was my first real PvP experience. Like, sure, I played StarCraft and all of that stuff, but I still would rather do PvP in Diablo. Did so many quirky builds in Diablo, like my teleporting barbarian, my frost paladin. There's so much. There's so much PvP stuff that I've done in Diablo. Man, the memories. Diablo 2, man, the nostalgia. That's what they're trying to do with this, by the way. They're really touching at your heartstrings with as much nostalgia as they possibly can. One of the things that was discussed during Riker's stream was also monetization. He was specifically asking them, like, what were your plans for monetization? They're like, we're not going to sell power. Instantly, that was like the first thing that they said. Now, it depends on the interpretation that they have on what selling power is, because you can make the argument that, well, I mean, if we have an auction house and you can get gold and then you can use that gold to buy items, we're not really selling your power. So, you know, there is the possibility for that interpretation. I doubt they're going to do something as stupid as that, because if they put like any kind of auction house in the game, I think that's going to basically cripple the game from day one, particularly when it comes from a critical aspect from anyone that, you know, already knows what the result was during Diablo 3. So I think they're going to sell you cosmetics. Like, one of the things that they've shown is that this game's going to have mounts, and you're going to be able to customize the mounts. So I expect to see them sell mounts just like they do in World of Warcraft. Like, the simple fact that Diablo is going to have mounts is going to open up a whole new market for them. Like, just look at how many store mounts exist for World of Warcraft, and you should get a clue as to how much they can monetize this. It also means that there's potential for some pretty immersion-breaking stuff. Like, you might be playing Diablo, someone might show up in your game in a friggin' sparkle pony. I don't know, a unicorn which farts rainbows. That might actually be something that happens. I hope it's not. I hope they're smart enough to avoid those types of situations, because, you know, some players want to come into the world of Diablo to really get immersed instead of just, like, you know, getting their immersion completely busted up by some random person showing up in gear that makes absolutely no sense. But we shall see how the whole thing pans out. Now, in Diablo 3, we had an armored transmogrification system, and I predict that this might be what they do with Diablo 4 as well. They might sell you, like, armors that you can then transmogrify on top of your actual armor to look a certain way. That would be a market that they could go for in terms of cosmetics. But one of the things that they did explain is that they are planning on doing traditional expansions after the game is released. And I gotta say, it would actually be nice to see Blizzard go back to traditional expansions as opposed to trying to make a game just like a live service for the sake of being a live service. I mean, just think of it like this. We all know that right now Blizzard is on thin ice with its community. It's completely burned away any goodwill that it's built up over the years. And as such, it's going to take them quite a bit to make up to people for all of the stuff that they've been doing. But imagine if, like, you get Diablo 4, and it's actually a good game. It's not going to be the most groundbreaking thing ever from the footage that we've seen, right? It's not going to be the most groundbreaking thing, but it is going to be nostalgic. And if it is a full experience and there's no shenanigans with it, right? And then you get, like, an expansion comparable to, like, what we got with Iceborne for Monster Hunter World. Like, that would be a good thing in my book. If Blizzard is able to properly develop this game, properly deliver this game, and then properly expand on this game, as opposed to what they did with Diablo 3, which is they did Reaper of Souls, which was a pretty decent expansion in my book. And then it's like, oh, and now here's a Necromancer for $10 or whatever the hell it was. And I was like, I thought we were going to have, like, another expansion. Like, that's what I was expecting for Diablo 3. But we shall see how all of that stuff pans out. But yeah, I'm very conflicted, and I'm very curious to know what you guys thought about the Diablo announcement. I was actually surprised that most of you seem to be very positive towards the idea of Diablo 4, because I made a poll on Twitter when I initially saw the first gameplay trailer. I was like, what do you guys thought about it? And most of you actually voted hell yeah, which, again, was very surprising for me. I really didn't expect it. But, you know, it is what it is. Now, a couple of other announcements that Blizzard has done, if you guys are curious my thoughts on those, there was Shadowlands, which is another World of Warcraft expansion, where basically you see Sylvanas being a badass, killing the new Lich King, which is not Arthas. If you guys have not been following the storyline of World of Warcraft, it's actually Bolvar Fordragon, who's the current Lich King. And some people were surprised that she just beat the crap out of Lich King, but you need to understand, like, Bolvar for a dragon was kind of like already broken and burned and tortured, and he was, at least in my opinion, he was not nearly as powerful as Arthas. I don't know what the lore situation is on that, but considering all the things that happened to Bolvar, I wouldn't expect him to be nearly as powerful as Arthas. So, you know, it is what it is. She just beat the crap out of him, then she cracked open the friggin' Lich King helm and shattered the skies. I suppose that whoever's up in that crazy tower up there, because I don't really feel like following World of Warcraft all that much, to be honest, because the stuff that they did with BFA is still left a really bad taste in my mouth. I'm talking about Mythic Dungeons, Mythic Rewards. Those of you that watched me while I was playing the game, you'll know what I was talking about. But yeah, I think that the thing up in the tower is probably Ner'zhul, I would imagine, because Ner'zhul, the original Lich King, all that stuff. But basically, I'm kind of unfazed when it comes to Shadowlands. Yeah, it's the next expansion. They're going to be doing one of those every so years to try to keep World of Warcraft relevant, because it still makes them a lot of money. Why not? You know, all of that stuff. And then there's Overwatch 2, which was more confusing than anything. Like, one of the things that I've always wanted from the original Overwatch was some kind of a cooperative experience to play with friends. I never really played that that event that they did in the original Overwatch, which was supposedly more around PvE. I think I played maybe one of the scenarios, but I never really went too deep into that, because at that point I kind of checked out from Overwatch. So them making Overwatch 2, which actually appears to be a prequel to Overwatch, if I'm understanding the timeline correctly from the time that I played the original Overwatch, but it's still called Overwatch 2, and it has a bunch of PvE stuff in it. But at the same time, if you own the original Overwatch, you can play with people that have Overwatch 2, and you can bring in all of your skins from Overwatch 1 into Overwatch 2. It just feels kind of weird, because here's the reason why I think Blizzard is doing that. Because they know that while they have a huge install base, like a ton of people bought Overwatch, they're also aware of the fact that a lot of those people are most likely not actively playing Overwatch right now. And if they fragment that community by like, hey, here's Overwatch 2, everybody needs to buy Overwatch 2 to get into Overwatch 2, they know they're not going to have the numbers. But if they link up Overwatch 2 players with Overwatch 1, they have a higher chance of the Overwatch 1 players going like, there's a new update of some kind. I'm going to go check it out and see what's going on. And then they will have people to fill lobbies. And at the same time, those people, once they start playing, they might be like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. Maybe I should check out that PvE thing that they got going. And they'll upgrade into Overwatch 2. That's kind of the plan I think they're doing for Overwatch 1, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think that is a bad thing. In a way, it's positive, because, you know, you still can play all of the competitive stuff if you just own the base Overwatch, and they're not really leaving you behind. But at the same time, I almost feel like you should just give whatever you're doing to everyone for free, considering the ridiculous amount of money you've already made through Overwatch's microtransactions. But that's just me. We still don't know what the price is. We don't know what the release window is. We don't know anything about Overwatch 2. And to be honest, it's not really a franchise that I'm deeply invested in at this point. I might potentially still be invested in it if I was still playing games with Squadron and stuff like that. But, you know, I've never been that much into competitive games. The co-op stuff has me very curious if that could potentially be something that I would want to play with friends. But at this point, I just don't know. I just don't know. And again, do remember, I'm doing this as kind of like my thoughts on the stuff that was announced at BlizzCon. I'm not doing this as like, oh yeah, man, I fucking love Blizzard. It's amazing. They're the best. No, I still feel exactly the same way as I felt about Blizzard for the past year. Nothing has really changed in regards to that. I'm just very curious about what they're doing with this Diablo 4 situation, and I will be following that as we move forward. Let me know what you think about this video. If you did enjoy it, hit up the like button, because that helps me out much more than you can possibly imagine. As you guys know, recently it's been revealed how YouTube kind of like shadow nerfs people's content and stuff like that. You can look up, check your P-score if you're curious of what I'm talking about, and how they kind of like rate certain videos in a certain way. And the only real way for content creators to kind of break through all of the stupid walls that YouTube is rising up around us, is liking the video, subscribing to people that you like, and leaving comments and stuff like that. That's the only real way to help. So if you did enjoy the video, hit the like button. If you didn't enjoy it, hit the dislike button. Feedback is also very important. But once again, thank you all very much for watching. Stay strong, and may your shields never break.